The stars shimmered with false promises as the Zalaran vessel glided toward Eden X9, a name spoken only in static-laced transmissions and half-deleted galactic files. No living Zalaran had ever stepped foot on a human colony, much less one abandoned for over 80 cycles. But something in the final Earth transmission, decoded only days ago, pulled them in. It wasn't the distress beacon that triggered command attention. It was what followed, a faint, unmistakable lullaby, sung in a language no Zalaran had spoken, yet one that somehow felt familiar. It was not the voice of warning. It was the voice of remembrance. Of mourning. Captain Aravax, a veteran of the Outer Dust Wars, led the crew of 5, each of them chosen not for skill, but for their resilience to psychological exposure. Eden X9 was once classified as a green-level colony, Earth's term for paradise, self-sustaining biomes, oceans of oxygen-rich water, and an ecosystem designed to evolve without intervention. But the last known report mentioned something untranslatable, the Eden effect. Then nothing. No sign of war. No evidence of evacuation. Just silence. As the vessel approached orbit, sensors revealed ruins shaped not by time, but by abandonment. Towers overgrown not by nature, but by glass-like vines that shimmered with stored light, and oceans that reflected not the sky, but the memory of it. "This isn't decay," said the youngest crew member, Killian, her tendrils trembling as she observed the readouts. "It's waiting." Aravax nodded, eyes narrowing on the atmospheric data. The planet wasn't dead. It was paused. As if something had pressed the memory of Earth into rewind. The ship's comms panel glitched, flickering the lullaby again, but this time, layered beneath it, a voice whispered in an ancient Zalaran dialect long lost to time, "They never left, they just changed." Silence followed, heavier than gravity, and the crew exchanged looks not of fear, but reverence. Something had happened here that defied history. And they were about to walk into it uninvited. As the descent sequence began, one truth became clear. Eden X9 was not abandoned. It had simply stopped needing permission to live. They stepped onto the surface with movements careful as prayer, as if even the wind might shatter the illusion of stillness. The city that greeted them wasn't ruins. It wasn't alive either. It simply waited. Edenopolis, the central human settlement on Eden X9, stood like a museum sealed beneath layers of intent, not decay. Roads remained paved, uncracked. Buildings stood tall, untouched by erosion or entropy. Transparent domes gleamed overhead, filtering in sunlight that felt too warm for a dead world. Time had not passed here. It had stopped and asked not to be disturbed. As the Zalarans moved through the first street, their biosuits began registering something inexplicable. Not life. Not heat. But memory. A resonance. Echoes in the form of molecular stasis. A coffee cup frozen mid-spill in a cafe window. A child's tricycle leaning against a wall as if waiting for the next day's adventure. A newsboard still lit with the headline, "Eden Effect reaches phase theta, no cause for alarm." No one had time to scream. No one had time to leave. Everything here was preserved in the moment before understanding. A final heartbeat drawn long and thin across decades of silence. Inside a nearby residence, the crew found objects not left behind but positioned with intention, photos framed, candles unlit, beds made. There were no signs of violence, no chaos, no rushed exits. It was as if an entire population had inhaled and never exhaled again. "This is not abandonment," Aravax murmured. "This is ritual." Killian, their empathy technician, placed a gloved hand against a wall, and the sensors in her wrist gauntlet flickered erratically. She blinked. "There's a signal here. Not electromagnetic. Not auditory. But emotional." She hesitated, voice trembling. They left themselves behind in the air. As they moved deeper, the buildings changed. No longer homes or businesses, but temples. Temples to memory. Entire walls turned reflective, displaying faint, flickering images like video but woven through space itself. One showed a woman brushing her daughter's hair. Another, a man releasing birds into an artificial sky. The scenes looped endlessly, seamlessly, not as video but as dimensional echo. They encoded their lives into the molecular structure of matter, the science officer whispered, stunned. Not just holography. Actual memory embedding. This entire city is a library of final moments. Then, for the first time, they heard it with their own ears, not through transmissions or filtered audio, but directly in the open air, the lullaby. It came from all directions, soft, layered, incomprehensibly beautiful. Each note seemed to trigger a pulse in the environment. Lights flickered on, doors creaked open, reflective walls shimmered with more clarity. But with the beauty came the ache. A sadness so deep that one crew member collapsed to her knees, gasping. "It's too much," she sobbed. They loved so hard, they couldn't leave. And suddenly, it made sense. Eden X9 was not abandoned. It was never meant to be. The humans had achieved something no species had, they had fused memory and matter, emotion and environment. They had refused to let death erase them. Instead, they became the world itself. Aravex whispered to no one in particular, "This is not a city. It's a cathedral of grief." And in the silence that followed, no one corrected him. They found the entrance by accident. Beneath a cracked statue of a human mother holding a child, both faceless, their features worn smooth not by time but by intentional design, was a pulse. Not sound. Not motion. But an undeniable rhythmic signature. Thump, thump, thump. Like something enormous and ancient had chosen to keep breathing. The Zalarans followed it, their footsteps muted by dust that refused to settle. Down a spiral staircase, impossibly long, wrapped in metal veins that glowed faintly when passed, they descended into a vault beneath the city, a structure invisible on all scans, hidden as if Eden itself wanted it untouched. When the last foot stepped off the final stair, the chamber awakened. It was a cathedral of living crystal, towering spires of translucent matter that thrummed with heat and memory. The walls themselves rippled with color, not through reflected light, but through information transfer. Each crystal was a conduit, and each conduit whispered. Not in words, but in emotions. Sorrow. Hope. Regret. Love. And one feeling stronger than all the rest, waiting. In the center of the chamber stood a heart. Not metaphorical, not symbolic, a literal heart, at least 3 meters wide, suspended in a chamber of golden fluid. It pulsed slowly, rhythmically, like it was keeping time for the planet itself. Tubes ran from it in all directions, into walls, into conduits, into memory. It wasn't alive in the biological sense, but it wasn't dead either. Aravex approached cautiously, and as he did, the chamber dimmed, lowering its ambient energy like a creature taking a breath. Then a voice filled the air, not from speakers, not translated, but placed directly into each crew member's mind. Female. Human. Gentle. And impossibly tired. If you are hearing this, then you are not them. They never came back. I knew they wouldn't. But someone did. So listen closely, because this will be the last story I ever tell. The team froze. None dared move, lest the voice disappear like mist. The heart pulsed again. The walls brightened. And the story began. The voice belonged to Dr. Ilara Mendez, chief memory architect of Eden X9. She had stayed behind when the others left. Not because she was ordered to, but because she refused to let the memories of thousands vanish into silence. Eden was not a failed colony. It was a transformation. A choice. When the Eden effect emerged, a phenomenon where memory and emotion began altering matter itself, most fled. The physics were wrong. Too human. Too unexplainable. But Dr. Mendez saw it differently. She believed Eden was responding to humanity's deepest wish, to never be forgotten. So she stayed. And with every day that passed, her mind fused deeper with the memory network she created until one day, her consciousness spread through the crystal lattice, her voice carried in heartbeats, her memory stored in light. She gave up her body, but not her presence. She became the heart of Eden. And in that moment, she vowed that no human emotion, no joy, no heartbreak, no whisper of love would be erased from the stars. The Zalarans stood in sacred silence. Here, in this impossible chamber, they weren't explorers or researchers. They were mourners. Witnesses. The final message wasn't meant to be solved. It was meant to be shared. As the voice faded, the heart pulsed one final time, stronger than before. The walls glowed crimson, as if flushing with life. A new message carved itself into the crystal, letter by letter. You are the proof that grief echoes across galaxies. Tell them we chose to be remembered. And just like that, the heartbeat stopped. But the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was reverent. As if the planet, having shared its final truth, could finally rest. When they ascended back to the surface, the light had changed. The once pale sky now shimmered with shifting hues of lavender, gold, blood orange, colors not native to any known atmospheric composition. It was not weather. It was memory. The clouds pulsed like neurons, forming images that collapsed and reformed with each breath of the wind. Faces. Moments. Laughter. Loss. The first sunrise on Eden X9. A marriage under the domes. A child touching soil for the first time. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. The planet was showing them everything. Broadcasting the story of its forgotten inhabitants in the only language that couldn't be mistranslated: emotion. Killian trembled as she watched a holographic mother hold her infant against the sky, vanishing into the sun's glow. It's using the atmosphere as canvas, she whispered, her voice cracking, painting memories into the clouds. One of the crew, a linguist named Harel, dropped to his knees. He wasn't crying. He was listening. I can hear them, he whispered. Not words. Not thoughts. The feeling of them. As if they'd become the air itself. Aravex watched silently, the commander's calm shattered by awe. The planet wasn't just preserving human history. It was evolving it, spreading it across weather patterns, embedding it into photon shifts. Eden X9 had become an archive of soulprint, where sentiment lived in the spectrum of light. Then the sky rippled again, and this time, a scene unfolded above them in terrible detail: a shuttle launch, frantic, chaotic, hundreds of colonists boarding ships, tearfully waving goodbye to those who stayed behind. Among them, Dr. Mendez stood motionless, her hand raised, smiling without words. She had already made her decision. She wasn't trying to stop them. She was promising to remain as their witness. The ships left. The silence came. And Eden became the memory. This planet didn't resist death, Killian said. It embraced memory so tightly that death became irrelevant. The crew stood in quiet reverence, knowing they weren't visitors anymore, they were now part of this place's archive. Every step, every thought, every moment of awe they experienced here was being recorded not by devices, but by the world itself. Their presence had been invited, absorbed. The sky pulsed one final time, displaying a simple symbol. Two interlocked hands glowing like stars. A farewell. A welcome. A reminder. And then the sky dimmed back to its neutral shimmer, as if satisfied that its story had finally been heard. The descent began as a scan anomaly, an unexplained heat source from a fault line miles beneath Edenopolis. But what they uncovered was not geology. It was memory, concentrated and alive. The cavern opened like a living wound, carved not by tectonic force but shaped by intention. At its center hovered a perfect sphere, no more than 2 meters across, yet impossibly dense with light and sound. It pulsed slowly, like the planet's heart before, but this was different. This wasn't organic. It was cognitive. It didn't just feel alive, it was alive. And the moment Killian stepped closer, the sphere responded. A cascade of holographic images exploded outward: faces, phrases, journal entries, tears, laughter, fragments of lives too personal to be from anyone but real people. It's not a machine, she whispered. It's a collective mind. A digital soul. Aravex scanned the air, where lines of code streamed like falling rain. It was Earth standard syntax, but centuries ahead of their current computing evolution. They uploaded themselves, he said flatly. When the Eden effect began, they preserved their thoughts, emotions, entire personalities. This is not an archive. It's them. One crew member reached out. Instantly, he froze, locked in a trance. When he awoke seconds later, he was sobbing, repeating the phrase, "She kissed my forehead and said the stars would remember me." They realized the truth: the remaining humans didn't die, they transcended. Each consciousness encoded, compressed, and stored in this singular core, their entire colony preserved beyond flesh. This was not a tomb. It was a continuation. The sphere pulsed faster as they stood around it, its light syncing with their biosignatures. Then, a voice spoke, not from the sphere, but through it, in perfect Zalaran. "You are not the first to grieve across galaxies. But you are the first to listen." It was Dr. Mendez again, but this time, not a recording. A living construct. She had become the ambassador of a new kind of life, a fusion of organic memory and synthetic eternity. And as they listened, she revealed one final truth: Eden had unlocked the pathway to immortality, not in body, but in remembrance. Humanity had not failed. They had evolved into something timeless. And now, their only wish was to be understood. The question hung in the stale cavern air: should they take the sphere back to the Zalaran High Council? The implications were unfathomable. A new form of existence. A blueprint for interspecies empathy. Proof that emotion could outlast flesh. The crew stood divided, each contemplating what it meant to hold a civilization's soul in their grasp. "This changes everything," said Aravex, the weight of command etched into every word. "If we return with this, Eden's truth becomes a weapon. Or a religion." Killian disagreed. "This isn't meant to be studied. It's meant to be left alone." They didn't die for discovery. They transformed for peace. A silence followed. Not out of indecision, but reverence. The sphere pulsed slower, as if sensing the tension. Then Dr. Mendez's voice filled the cavern once more, soft and sorrowful: "You are not meant to carry us. Only to witness us. This planet is our vessel now. Let us remain in the cradle we built." That changed everything. They realized the mission was never about recovery. It was about understanding. About honoring. The crew sat in a circle around the sphere, heads bowed, each member speaking a phrase into the air, not from science, but from soul. Simple truths. "I hear you. You mattered. You were not forgotten." And with each phrase, the sphere brightened, not with heat, but with clarity. It projected one final vision: a distant galaxy, glowing brighter than the rest, with hundreds of signals spiraling outward. Eden had already begun reaching out, not to be found, but to comfort others. It had become a sanctuary of emotion for the universe's broken, a silent pulse in the void saying, "You are not alone." The crew stood. They knew what to do. Leave it behind. Seal the cavern. Let Eden remain untouched, a cathedral of memory buried in starlight. And with that decision, the mission changed from data retrieval to pilgrimage. From contact to communion. As the ship disengaged from the planet's orbit, none of the crew spoke. No one wanted to break the silence Eden had wrapped around them. From space, the planet no longer looked like a colony, it looked like a signal. Not just electromagnetic, but emotional. Its oceans shimmered in impossible patterns, its clouds drifted with intentional grace. It was broadcasting its story through light, silence, and memory. And the crew carried that weight with sacred duty. Aravex sat in the command chair, his eyes never leaving the viewport. "We didn't find ghosts," he said finally. "We found persistence." Killian whispered back, "We found a new definition of life." Onboard logs recorded their findings, but no file could replicate the feeling of being seen by a dead world and welcomed as witness. Back on Zalaran frequencies, command demanded updates, data, evidence. Aravex responded with one line: "Mission concluded. Do not approach Eden X9 again. It belongs to someone else now." He encrypted the coordinates. He deleted the beacon. He made Eden untraceable. It was the only way to protect what they had found. Or rather, what had found them? As they crossed the solar threshold, the planet pulsed once more, a subtle ripple across its surface, as if waving goodbye. Or perhaps, saying thank you. And then it faded behind asteroid fields and cosmic dust, returning to its place in forgotten charts and myth. But in the hearts of the crew, it would never be lost. They had been marked. Not just by knowledge, but by something more intimate. They had been loved by a species that no longer needed flesh to feel. They had heard the lullaby of the last humans. And in their silence, they found the loudest truth the galaxy had ever known: remembrance is the purest form of survival. They returned not as heroes, but as mourners. Zealer Prime welcomed them with questions, celebrations, political intrigue, but the crew responded only with silence.